In central Brazil's Rio de Janeiro, a violent conflict between local law enforcement and drug cartels has left over 100 people dead in the streets. And that's just the official number. Officially, on October 27, the Brazilian authorities launched an operation aimed at combating the territorial expansion of the criminal group Comando Vermelho. The government said the operation took over a year to prepare and involved more than 2,500 military and police personnel. At the same time, there are already rumors that behind the bloody clashes in Brazil is, who would have thought, Donald Trump, who is currently fighting drug cartels in Latin America. Supporters of this conspiracy theory remember that the governor of the state of Rio de Janeiro, Cláudio Castro, previously bypassed the country's president, Lula da Silva, and appealed to Washington, allegedly asking them to help him fight narco-terrorists. What about Russian propaganda overall? It writes, quote, "The United States will not leave Brazil alone until they remove President Lula da Silva, who is a supporter of de-dollarization in Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, and the sovereignty of Latin America." But this is where inconsistency appears. Just a day before the operation began in Rio de Janeiro, Trump met with that very president of Brazil, Lula da Silva, in Malaysia, and they agreed to make a pretty good trade deal. My name is Pechiy. Let's discuss this topic together, but before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, like this episode, and be sure to leave your comment under this video. Share your opinion. Also subscribe to my Telegram channel, Pechiy News. You'll find the link in this video's description, where we post breaking news as it happens. If you want to support our work, you can do so through donations, sponsorship, or a paid subscription using the links and details in the description of this video. It says there, support the Pechiy channel. Choose any format that's convenient for you. I appreciate any support you give. So at least 132 people have died as a result of a large-scale police operation against organized crime in Rio de Janeiro. Among the dead are 4 Brazilian police officers. Governor of Rio de Janeiro, Cláudio Castro, said that the official death toll from Tuesday's raid is 58. But then he added that this number will certainly change as further forensic examinations are conducted. And reportedly, dozens of bodies found by favela residents were laid out on the streets for relatives to identify after the deadly raid. Well, the footage there is certainly shocking, and next I'll quote Castro. "We can use what was done yesterday as the beginning of great efforts, the beginning of a great era when everyone will unite, everyone will be able to work together, and we will have good conditions for the liberation of the people." Rio Castro reported that during the operation, the police seized a large quantity of drugs and at least 42 rifles were confiscated. Well, later Castro called this raid the largest operation in the history of Rio de Janeiro. Although it is worth noting that police raids in the city of Rio de Janeiro are a common occurrence before international events. And next week, a major climate conference called the World Mayors Summit will take place in Rio. Overall, the picture is horrifying. The video showed huge columns of black smoke rising from the Alemão Favelas during the special operation. And as Castro stated, the authorities launched this operation aimed at combating the territorial expansion of the criminal group Comando Vermelho. The government said the operation took over a year to prepare and involved more than 2,500 military and police personnel. Let me explain here that Comando Vermelho is the oldest active criminal organization in Brazil. And its name, which in Portuguese means Red Command, Comando Vermelho, points to its origins as an organization of leftist prisoners, created during the military dictatorship that ruled Brazil until 1985. And since then, the Red Command has turned into a major transnational criminal group involved in drug trafficking and extortion. And according to the Rio de Janeiro police, at least 81 people connected to this group have been arrested. According to the authorities, during the raid, members of the gang allegedly attacked the police using drones. And by the way, on Tuesday, the United States State Department recommended that tourists avoid the northern part of Rio, warning that, quote, "Ongoing clashes between the police and criminal groups have led to disruptions in transportation in many areas of the northern zone." And it's telling that Castro stated the clash took place in a wooded area, and he believes that all those killed were criminals. And he said that he doesn't believe ordinary civilians would be wandering through a wooded area at that time. So no, all those killed were criminals. And overall, it's important to understand that this latest raid is not the first one in the Alimão favela, even this year. A January police operation caused 5 casualties. The area was filled with barricades made from burned out cars. Unfortunately, this is a familiar situation. And against this backdrop, Russian propaganda has already come up with a story that behind all this in Brazil is the President of the United States of America, Donald Trump, who wants to colonize Brazil. Well, I'll briefly, retell the nonsense that the Russians have made up. So, the main idea of Russian propaganda is this. Governor Cláudio Castro of Rio de Janeiro allegedly started a war with drug dealers in the favelas of the capital without coordinating his actions with the federal government. So, the police operation against the criminal group Comando Vermelho continued on October 27, 28 and 29 using armored vehicles of the state military police. And according to the law, such armored vehicles allegedly cannot be used without the permission of the federal authorities. And this is where the Russian conspiracy theory begins. Listen, they say Governor Castro is a member of the same party as former President Jair Bolsonaro, who is actively supported by United States President Donald Trump and who was imprisoned in Brazil. But that's not all. According to the Russians' version 8 months ago, that same Castro allegedly asked Washington to declare the Vermelho team a foreign terrorist organization in the United States and to impose sanctions against its leaders. You might wonder, what's so bad about that? Declaring the group terrorists and imposing sanctions. And do you know who they want to appoint as the leader of this group? Well, according to the Russians. Yeah, that very same Brazilian president, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, if he doesn't stop demanding de-dollarization in Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa countries trade. So basically the Russian story is that, well, yeah, so it's Castro. He urged the Americans to label this group as terrorists, name Lula da Silva as its leader, and if Lula continues to push for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa de-dollarization to work toward his overthrow. Remember that nonsense that Putin came up with? And then the Russians say like Maduro was declared the head of the trendy Aragua drug cartel. So they want to pull off the same thing in Brazil with Lula da Silva. Since Lula disagreed, Trump imposed 50% tariffs on him. Well, it's not quite like that, but they did impose 50% tariffs against Brazil because Bolsonaro was put in prison. But here Russian propaganda suddenly collapsed. Apparently they themselves didn't expect it. On October 26, the presidents of Brazil and the United States met in person in Malaysia. After the meeting, Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva said United States President Donald Trump guaranteed the signing of a trade agreement between the countries to eliminate those very 50% tariffs. According to Lula da Silva, the agreement will be reached faster than anyone thinks. He told reporters that his meeting with Trump was surprisingly good, and that he got the impression that soon there would be no problems between the countries. Well, does it mean that Russian propaganda has collapsed here? And it turns out it was just a police raid against drug dealers in Rio de Janeiro, but I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments under this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. That's it for now. Take care. Goodbye, everyone.